So we're going to start right away with an exercise today. So go ahead and group up into, let's go 3 to 4, this exercise. So minimum of 3, maximum of 4. We're going to be talking health insurance. And it is confusing. So minimum of 3, maximum of 4. Huddle up. Make sure you're close enough to really look at, talk to your neighbors. This one, you can flip it over to side 2 for starters. Kind of explain this one. So what we have here is 2 healthcare plans. One is called Health Choice, that's the middle column, and the other one's called Super Health. And so each one has different policies depending on what you're having done and how they cover it. So if you look here, we've got emergency room, urgent care, surgery, hospital care, prescriptions, physician office visit, vision, deductible, maximum out of pocket. What was deductible from yesterday? Deductible. What you pay if you have an accident or if you have an event, right? So you get sick or you break your arm or whatever, then you're going to go for an office visit and you'll have to pay deductible. So with these 2 plans, they have different deductibles. So Super Health has a $250 per calendar year deductible. And then Health Choice has no deductible for in-network, but $250 if you're out of network. Does anybody know what in-network, out-of-network is? Okay, so my health plan is through Ottawa University, and Ottawa University is through Blue Cross Blue Shield, right, currently, is our health insurance provider. Blue Cross Blue Shield has deals with especially the physicians in Ottawa, the ones we most likely go to. And so the hospital here, the doctors here, and then there'll be some other ones. Those are in network, meaning that if you go there, the rates are cheaper because Blue Cross Blue Shield had negotiated some special deals with those companies. And that way, it forces us to go to them, and they're willing, since they're going to get more customers, they give a little bit of a break on the price, right? Which we usually don't see very much of because we got the insurance going. But so that's what in-network is. So that's why it's a little cheaper here. You don't have to pay any deductible if you go to one of your in-network providers. If you're visiting your friend out in California and you break your arm, you are likely going to be out of network with whatever provider you go to, and you're going to have then some different conditions apply. I mean, it doesn't, it's not like you're not insured, but you just have a little bit higher prices that you have to pay. So you see this in-network, out-of-network thing on these different areas. And then we talked about maximum out-of-pocket yesterday. So 100% of the payments reach after you reach $1,000. So once you've paid $1,000 of your own money, then you are 100% covered with Super Health. And here, if you're in-network, it doesn't apply the maximum out of pocket because you didn't have to pay anything anyway. And out of network, 100% of the payments after $2,500. It's not. Yeah. Usually it would probably be out of network. Yeah. Well, you can check to see, so they give you a list of providers, and so there might be an in-network provider out of state, but it's going to be less likely. So usually the in-network ones are somewhere where you live. But yep. And it, like I said, it's not super, but a lot of times even a foot, if it's not an emergency, you might be able to wait till you go home to go to your home doctor anyway, right? So your foot's in a little pain, take some ibuprofen, wait to go see your doctor rather than running to the doctor right away. So a lot of things you might be able to wait till you go home to get it checked out also. I think it's part of it. Okay, anybody else? Any other questions? All right, so then you've got these things to work through. Now flip it back over to the other side. Now we're going to go through life as a person and look at what it would cost with each one. So as you do each one, do them side by side and say, okay, doctor's office visit for a sore throat and a cough. I'm going to an in-network provider. If I have health choice, what does it cost me? What does it cost me if I have super health? And then just start working your way down. We have an emergency room with stitches, appendectomy, eye exam, urgent care. Go. Hannah, you need to move. Josh, you need to move. Let's see, why don't we have Hannah, why don't you go here? And Josh, why don't we make one group of, since we're short, I guess you're gonna have 5 people. What's that?
Try to order that so being talked about.
Oh, you lost an extra credit point. Oh, we only had Caleb and Michael here on time at 8:55. So they got extra credit today. Yeah. Everybody else has got their paper. I'll leave this thing on the overhead flipped over to this side. If you sometimes you get, otherwise you're flipping back and forth, but whatever. You're talking about on this? 90% of the approved amount.
Oh, no.
Right here is the doctor's office visit, yeah. 90% of approved amount after the deductible. So you'll get 90% of it covered after you've paid your deductible.
So do you know the deductible?
Yeah, down at the bottom. That's the one we just covered. 250. So Brady, why don't you come up and join these guys? We'll have groups of 5 today since we're running a little. We got the latecomers here. Brady, come on up and.
Anyways.
So we are. Left. Okay, so this is 2 different insurance companies. And these are what they, for different types of services, this is their situation. So we already went over this in class. So I want you to get in closer to these guys so you can see what they're doing next year. And then now we're going to go through doctor's visit, emergency room, appendectomy, and you're going to put the cost to you with each one. Okay. Raven, we've already started a group activity.
Okay. Sorry, I was in a Zoom and it wasn't showing you, so I clicked on another link and now it popped up.
Oh, okay. So the health plan overview, if you want to look that up, and I'll turn the camera around so you can maybe peek with these guys and hear what they're saying. And health plan overview, though, is the chapter activity.
What chapter is that for?
9. This is the last thing in 9. Yep. And what you're doing is you've got 2 different companies' health plans on one side, and the different, like if you go to an office visit or if you have an emergency room, and then on the other side, you're going to actually have like stitches, and then you're going to look at how much each plan costs you. That's the idea. I'm going to spin you around. Okay, so investing we go. What is a stock? If you own a stock in a company, what is it? What's a stock? What? Shares of a company. Okay, so you can have a stock share. So give me a little bit more. You can add on to that, Caleb. What does it mean to have a share of a company? Okay, you own a small fraction of it, right? So when you own stocks, you literally own part of the company. So Pizza Time and Pizza Village on Main Street, there's an owner of the company, and they could cut you in and be a partner with the place if they wanted to. Eventually, when companies get real large, they might find it attractive to kind of go public with it. And so by going public with it, they can be put on stock exchanges, and people from all over the world can buy a share of your pizza company if you do some proper channels. So my point in saying that is that stocks are actually publicly traded share ownership of a company. But in a lot of ways, as Caleb said, it's not much different than Ottawa Main Street Pizza Company. You literally own the operations and are entitled to potential profits or increases in the stock price because of your ownership. Now, how about a bond? Stocks and bonds. What's a bond? Anybody know that one? That's a little tougher animal that we don't always talk about. What?
Bonds grow.
That type of thing could be stocks too, as far as you invest in it and it grows to 500. A bond is actually a little bit more specific in terms of how you're going to be paid. What it is an IOU. How many of you have had an IOU out to your buddy or parents or grandma or grandpa? IOU, right? So that is what a bond is. So a bond is CD. No, a CD is a certificate of deposit from a bank that you've agreed to put your money on deposit for a specified period of time, but it's not technically a bond. So they're a little bit different. And you're going to hear Dave Ramsey calls those certificates of depression rather than certificates of deposit because they're a little depressing on the interest rate that you get. So an IOU, let's say let's go $10,000. Love, I guess I'd go Biden now. Love Joe Biden. So the government doesn't collect enough money to pay for their expenses every year. So we run a deficit, maybe you've heard about it. So we don't charge enough taxes, so the government has to borrow. And they use government bonds as an instrument to borrow money. And then these can be sold all over the world. Any person in different countries, other governments, China owns a large fraction of our government debt. So government debt is facilitated through bonds. Some of these might be, it could be as little as a 3-month bond. I'm going to pay you back. You give me $10,000 today, and I'm going to give you back $100 plus the $10,000 back in just 3 months, right? So it kind of effectively, there's your investment as Samad was getting in. You give up $10,000 today, 3 months from now, you have $10,100. But it's very fixed, right? You know, the government tends not to default on their bonds, thank goodness, God bless America. So we have the ability to borrow these things, but that's kind of a double-edged sword. It's kind of caused us to borrow and borrow and borrow and borrow more because everybody trusts us, and we can, and frankly, we can always print out money if we need to pay them back. So that's a whole nother. Those of you who take my macroeconomics class will learn about that. But so this idea of a bond then can be done by corporations too. So if you're General Motors, love the CEO of General Motors, whatever, I don't know who that is, apparently anyway. And maybe this is a 5-year bond for $100,000. And they're going to pay you back $10,000 every year. So now you literally have a piece of paper, and so through the magic of your imagination here, so if I could rip this off the board, now Russ McCullough owns a General Motors bond, and because it's been standardized, if Russ McCullough wants his $100,000 back and it hasn't been 5 years, it's only been 2 years, I can go to Wall Street and say, bond for sale, here's the deal. GM's going to give you $100,000 for this in 2 years because I'm 3 years into it already. General Motors, really good American company that makes cars. They're going to give you $100,000 in 2 years, and they're going to continue to give you $10,000 for sale, what's it worth? And then you can just go sell it. So Josh is interested in it, he takes it, right? And now Josh paid me. General Motors didn't get any more money on that, right? So Josh paid me whatever we negotiated, and now Josh owns it. And he can own it all the way to the end, or he can sell it again to Michael, right? So that gets traded in what we call the secondary market. So that's the bond market. And it's a tradable, marketable security. So the Securities and Exchange Commission has kind of standardized this so that people in a different country can be comfortable buying it. They can do their research. They know GM's a good company. I'll buy one of those. That seems to be a pretty good rate of return for my money, and they buy it. But what we've really done is we're using a debt instrument, right? So what's baby step number 2? Pay off all debt. Now, for companies, I actually feel differently about that. If you're running your own business, you know, debt might be something that you can use. I don't believe it personally. I agree with Dave Ramsey to kind of live a personal debt-free life. But when it comes to businesses, borrowing can be an important thing that you need to do. And so this is a way that companies can borrow through issuing bonds. Similar to the stocks, when General Motors was a business owned by working out of their garage, if we tell the Steve Jobs story of Apple or something, right? And so they own Apple and Steve Jobs owns Apple. And they're like, man, I think I come up with some cool stuff, but I need a lot of money to develop the first iPhone, right? And of course, I'm not telling the real life story here. This would be back to the Apple computer that you guys have probably seen on all your history lessons. But let's just say I need like $1 billion to start this iPhone to ramp this business up. I don't have $1 billion. So I'm going to go to Wall Street and they're going to help me sell part of my company. Because I'm going to try to sell. I think I've got a great idea. I have a track record of doing good things with computers. And so now I'm going to do an initial public offering of stock. I'm going to sell part of my company. I'm going to maintain 50% ownership, but I'm going to sell the other 50%. And that's where we get into what Caleb said. I'm going to sell a share of my company. That's stocks. Now, the difference is when you raise money to build a new iPhone using stocks, you don't have to pay back those guys like this, right? It's different than debt. So Steve Jobs also, to do the iPhone, could have went to the bank and borrowed $1 billion. But then he'd be on the hook to pay back the amounts all on his own. So he's like, I got a better idea. Let me bring partners in or investors through selling stocks, shares of my company. So that's basically the stock versus bond. And now the same thing is true that once I was the first buyer, so Russ McCullough bought the first share of Apple, Steve Jobs' company, and it again says I own, it would be, my thing would look a little different here with the stock. So the stock certificate might be, you know, 1 share of Apple. And again, it's all standardized. And now I own it. I gave Steve Jobs $300 to buy a share of his company. I own one little tiny share, 1 out of 1 billion shares or something. I own a little slice, but now I have something I can sell. So I hold on to it for 2 years because I like owning Apple stock, right? But then I end up having a baby and getting married, and I'm like, oh, that wedding's gonna be expensive. Thank goodness Apple's hit it, because now my stock that was worth 300 is actually selling for 600. So now I can sell my stock. I go to Wall Street. Josh, who I don't know, let's pretend, right? This isn't a private deal. He calls up his broker. He wants to buy Apple at $600. He buys a share of Apple stock. He pays me through the broker the $600. Did Steve Jobs get any more money? No. So again, it's all a secondary market, an asset that doesn't affect the underlying company. And when the stock is traded, when GameStop was going crazy, GameStop didn't get any more money. Right? That was just trades between whoever's on Robinhood and trading back and forth. It was just passing the stock certificate back and forth among people. GameStop didn't get a dime of that. All right, so that's the stock and bond market. Any questions there to kind of tee us up?
Wait, I don't even know not to stop paying you this sort of thing.
Through the broker, you'd be, like if there was a dividend or the bond, yeah, that'd be part of what the broker does. Yeah, so you'd have a brokerage account set up, and they're kind of sanctioned by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And so whoever is the listed broker would get the dividend check and it can be sent straight to your personal residence too. You just have to set that up. Yeah, good question. Yeah,
Okay, so when they were buying GameStop a lot, right? How is that not how is GameStop not gaining more money? How they're not holding on to more money now?
Well,
How's that?
so the only way that GameStop could have gained from it is if they were holding some of their own shares, which companies can do. They usually don't do that to a large extent. So most of the shares are all owned by outsiders, just like we described. And so when the share value goes up, whoever was lucky enough to trade GameStop for $400 and got the sale, all that money went to them. GameStop didn't get a dime. Unless GameStop was holding on to some of their own shares, and then when it went up, they sold it to somebody else. But that didn't happen, and that would be normal fact.
Then what's the point of, so the company has all those people that have, like, put the money in because they're investing, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that mean they have more money?
No, not unless they sell it. So if GameStop is at $20, it goes up to 400 next month, down back to 20 the next month. In 2 months, did you gain or lose anything? No. So in order to gain to profit, you have to do the sale or the trade, the profit or the loss. And in fact, it could have went from 20 to 400 down to 5, and now you sell and you just lost 15 bucks. You're kicking yourself like, oh, why did I sell when it was at 400? Well, hindsight's 20/20. Yes, you probably should have sold it, but you didn't. Yep. So the stock market and bond market are really helping facilitate people who want to buy and sell. Think of it no differently than buying your car, right? You buy a used car from somebody. General Motors doesn't get that money at all if you buy a GM car, right? It's the same thing. You're just buying somebody else's asset. So the Wall Street and the stock market and bond market are there to help allow you to build wealth how you see fit. You can trade with other people. You're free to sell your car. You're free to buy more cars. You can buy and sell bonds all day long to try to manage your own personal wealth. Okay, anybody else? Questions? Abby, you looked at perplexed. Question? Something come to mind or not?
I don't know. I'll keep it.
Okay, we'll do the first video and we'll open up for discussion after that too. So. 3 chapters left. How many weeks of class are? Okay, so we had a couple big things there. What was the big D word? That's key for investing. What is it? Diversification, yes. So in your part of your book here, we look at 2 different stories here on the power of diversification. So what would happen if 2 people invested $10,000, one diversifies, the other doesn't, and left it alone for 25 years? So if investor number 1 goes 25 years and earns 7% rate of return, that $10,000 grows to $57,000. Not too bad, right? So no diversification, just put all of the money into an asset that's bearing 7%. You know, again, stocks, bonds, that's what we're talking about, financial investments of some sort. We're going to spend a lot of time thinking about where. The other person takes $2,000 and bets on red and black comes up. Loses it all. $2,000 gone. $2,000 is sitting in cold hard cash, $20, $100 bills under their mattress. $2,000 gets a 5% rate of return. So how much have we used up already? $6,000 of the $10,000 is all at rates less than the 7%. 2,000 hits 10% and 2,000 hits 15%. And look at the difference. With that little bit amount over that long period and allowing compound interest to hit, diversification got us 116,000. And it was okay that 2,000 disappeared even, right? Pretty powerful statement. It says that you can be more risky with some of your investments if you diversify. So you can take on some additional risk What's the risk reward trade-off? High risk means what to your returns, expected returns. Expected returns, if you take high risk, you should have higher expected returns. But they might be more volatile, they might be more risky, but you should get, some of them should be hitting high, like 15%. Some of them might get you 0 and you lose all the 2,000, right? So that's the whole point. If we spread out our money into a little bit what could be on a single investment, higher risk, it can pay off some big money, almost double here with that. So they mentioned the distinction between saving and investing. What was the difference? Because some people, we confuse that, like, oh, I'm saving my money, when really they're investing their money, or I'm investing my money, but you're not really investing. What was the distinction that Rachel made on at the early part of the video? Saving is short-term, investing is long-term. Good. So, and she kind of put about a 5-year length of time, just kind of mentally. So you might be saving for a new car, and that might take you 4 years to save up for a new car, right? And so if you're saving for something, you probably shouldn't be putting it into the stuff that we're talking about for putting it in for mutual funds and long-term investments. Because there might be some risk, and you want to buy a car after 4 years, and you end up picking a riskier thing, you haven't allowed enough time for the diversification to kick in. So we want a longer time horizon, minimum of 5 years, usually maybe even 10 years. I'm tucking away this money, and I'm not going to have to tap into it. If I'm following the game plan that Dave Ramsey put forward, it's very, very unlikely you're going to have to tap into it, because maybe step number 1, 1,000, how big? $1,000 emergency fund. Baby step number 2, pay off all debts. Baby step number 3, 3 to 6 months of emergency fund of expenses. And finally, baby step number 4, which we haven't gotten to for a while. That's actually this chapter. Invest. How much? We got a specific recommendation. Baby step number 4. 15% of your income going towards investments. Yeah. So just to use a round number, if you and your new spouse are making $100,000 combined, you're putting $15,000 away into this stuff. And so a lot of times when people don't have baby step number 3 covered before they start baby step number 4, and an emergency accident happens and they have to have $15,000, they go to this and borrow against the fund or unplug the investment. But if you're following the baby steps, you've got $15,000 in the account, and you pay for it out of your emergency fund, and your investments stay untouched, so that you can go 25 years without having to touch them. You got to let that compound interest start to kick in, because some of the benefits don't come till a little bit later. So have you guys thought about diversification in different ways? Like, what other ways can diversification pay off for you in your life? Have you ever had too much focused attention or on one particular thing where in hindsight you're like, oh, maybe I should have spread things out a little bit? How about with relationships? Relationships. Why would it be good to have a diversified portfolio of relationships?
If something happens to them.
Yeah. So you have one friend, your best friend, that you do 100% of everything with, right? You don't even basically talk to anybody else. So you are completely invested into that one relationship, and that person has to move away because mom and dad moved to a different state or something, right? It's like your life falls apart. Whereas maybe if you were a little more diversified with your friend portfolio and had at least 3 friends or something, life wouldn't be completely upside down, right? So diversification is kind of a powerful tool in not just financial areas, but in other areas as well. Okay, we're going to start the next video. Before I do, I just wanted to show you that we're going to have your chapter 9. Some of you have already done that, but officially due tonight for the insurance chapter. And then on Sunday, we've got a couple different exercises. I'm going to have you finish what we're going to start now with chapter 2, but we have this investment scavenger hunt, which is kind of fun. Well, fun for me. I don't know if it's always fun for you guys, but here's what you're gonna do is you're just gonna go to the internet and find a whole bunch of different financial assets. Mutual funds, gold, I don't know if Pork Bellies is on here, the highest price for Coca-Cola, Walmart, the lowest rate, certificate of deposit, mutual funds, treasury bonds. So you basically just Google and put that information. So it's an investment scavenger hunt. And that way, when we come back next week, you guys will have been exposed to a whole bunch of financial possible investments. And then we'll be able to have a more fruitful discussion on which ones are the best ones to do. And then the other exercise is something you've already had some exposure with, the investment calculator. This won't take you very long. It is just putting $1,000 into the investment calculator and seeing how much it's worth. So you start to get that feeling of how much is X amount of money worth down the road. So those are the things. Along with finishing this, we'll get into video. All right, we'll stop it there. You guys can, that's part of your homework for Sunday night. Finish off the section 2 right where you drop the shot put on the eggs. Don't have all your eggs in one basket. See you Monday.